Welcome to Speech and Mind, the space where ancient wisdom meets modern science. Today, we're diving into something powerful, something most people do all day yet rarely notice: inner speech, that constant voice in your head. Is it just mental noise, or the key to motivation, transformation, and lasting change? Science now confirms what mystics have taught for centuries. Your inner dialogue is shaping your destiny. In this episode, we'll explore how your inner speech wires your brain, drives your motivation, and influences every step you take, whether towards success or stagnation. We'll bridge neuroscience and spirit, exploring teachings from Neville Goddard, William Walker Atkinson, and modern research in neuroplasticity and motivational psychology. So let's begin. Section 1. What is inner speech? Have you ever noticed that you're constantly talking to yourself, even when your lips aren't moving? From the moment you wake up to the moment your head hits the pillow, there's an invisible voice narrating your life. It comments on what you see, judges how you feel, makes predictions, and even argues with itself. This is what we call inner speech, the silent, ongoing dialogue that lives within the mind. Most people live their entire lives without becoming consciously aware of it. But here's the truth. Inner speech is not just background noise. It's the programming language of your consciousness. Let's break it down. From a neuroscientific perspective, inner speech primarily originates in a region of the brain known as the default mode network, or DMN. This network becomes active when you're not focused on the external world, when your mind is wandering, imagining, daydreaming, or reflecting. It's the internal canvas where your sense of self is constructed, maintained, and reinforced. The DMN includes brain areas like the medial prefrontal cortex, associated with self-referential thought, and the posterior cingulate cortex, linked to memory and evaluation. This network forms the basis of how we perceive me, the inner identity, and is heavily shaped by the way we talk to ourselves. Inner speech isn't random. It reflects your beliefs, past experiences, assumptions, and emotional conditioning. Over time, it becomes a looping system of identity. And because your brain is neuroplastic, always changing in response to repetition and attention, those silent words are sculpting the very circuits that shape your motivation, emotions, and behavior. But long before neuroscience gave it a name, spiritual mystics understood its power. Take Neville Goddard, for instance, a mystic and teacher who emphasized the creative power of the human imagination. Neville believed that inner speech was a tool of creation, not just thought. He wrote, "Your inner conversations are perpetually unfolding in the realm of imagination, and imagination creates reality." In other words, what you repeat within, you express without. He taught that by changing the tone and direction of your inner dialogue, you could literally alter your external world, because consciousness is the only reality. Today, science is catching up to this mystical truth. Modern research reveals that inner speech does far more than entertain the ego. It has direct effects on your emotional well-being, your behavior, and your motivation. Let's look at 3 key impacts of inner speech on the brain. 1. Inner speech shapes emotional states. When your inner voice is critical, fearful, or hopeless, your brain mirrors that state, releasing stress hormones like cortisol and reinforcing negative emotional circuits. But when your inner speech is empowering, soothing, or confident, your body follows, releasing neurotransmitters like serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphins, which elevate your emotional baseline. What you say to yourself literally becomes your emotional weather. 2. Inner speech influences decision-making. Whether you're aware of it or not, Your inner monologue shapes your moment-to-moment choices. It becomes the internal narrator, evaluating options, assessing risk, and forecasting outcomes. If your inner voice says, "This is too hard, I'll probably fail," your prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning and decision-making, is influenced toward inaction or avoidance. But if your inner voice says, "This may be challenging, but I've done hard things before," your brain evaluates the situation with greater optimism, boosting your likelihood of action. 3. Inner speech activates the brain's reward system. Motivational inner speech has the power to activate the dopaminergic system, particularly the ventral tegmental area, VTA, and nucleus accumbens, key regions in the brain's reward circuit. When you imagine a positive future and speak to yourself as if it's already unfolding, as Neville Goddard advised, you aren't just visualizing, you're priming your brain with the chemistry of motivation. This is where inner speech becomes a fuel source. Empowering self-talk increases dopamine. Dopamine increases goal-directed behavior. And goal-directed behavior builds confidence, which loops back into stronger inner speech. It's a neuro-spiritual feedback loop. And that brings us to the essential question. What are you saying to yourself, right now, silently, about your life, your worth, your future? Because whether you realize it or not, that voice is creating neural patterns, and those patterns are shaping how motivated or unmotivated you feel. If your inner speech is defeatist, fearful, or small, you are unknowingly reinforcing a future of inertia. But if it is bold, loving, and visionary, you're activating the very circuits that drive action, clarity, and achievement. As William Walker Atkinson once wrote, "The first step towards success is taken when you refuse to be a captive of the environment in which you first find yourself. And the first prison to escape is the prison of thought." So the journey toward motivation doesn't begin with an action. It begins with a word you speak inside. Section 2. Inner Speech and the Neuroscience of Motivation. So now that we've uncovered the profound influence of inner speech, both spiritually and neurologically, let's dive deeper into how inner speech directly impacts motivation and how your brain responds. To understand motivation through a neuroscientific lens, we must first ask, what is motivation? Really? At its core, motivation is the internal process that initiates, guides, and sustains goal-directed behavior. It's not just about willpower. It's about biology, chemistry, and belief. Motivation is deeply tied to the brain's reward system, particularly to the action of a neurotransmitter called dopamine, often mischaracterized as the pleasure chemical. Dopamine is actually more about anticipation and desire than mere enjoyment. It fuels the energy to act, to move towards something, to strive. But here's where it gets fascinating. Your inner speech can trigger or block the release of dopamine. Imagine two people facing the same challenge, starting a new business. One says, "This is exciting. I'm ready. I know I'll learn and grow." The other says, "I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I'll probably mess it up." Both have identical circumstances, but their internal dialogue triggers very different neurochemical realities. In the first case, the brain anticipates reward, releasing dopamine, energizing the body, sharpening focus. In the second, the brain anticipates failure or pain, lowering dopamine, increasing cortisol, and causing procrastination or paralysis. This is not metaphor. This is measurable neuroscience. Let's look at three major neurological systems involved in motivation and how inner speech affects each one. 1. The Reticular Activating System, RAS. The RAS is your brain's filter, a bundle of nerves at the base of the brainstem that determines what information gets your attention. You tell it what's important by repetition and emotional tone. If your inner speech constantly repeats, "I never follow through," the RAS filters your experience to confirm that belief. You'll notice your failures and miss your wins. But if you instead repeat, "I am disciplined and energized," the RAS highlights opportunities, tools, and moments of success, even small ones, reinforcing your belief. The RAS is not mystical, but it behaves like a bridge between thought and experience. It explains why Neville Goddard emphasized dwelling in the end, speaking and imagining as though your desire is already fulfilled. You're not just faking confidence, you're reprogramming your brain's filter. 2. The prefrontal cortex. This area is responsible for planning, focus, and decision-making. But it's also vulnerable to inner dialogue. Negative self-talk can reduce working memory and cognitive flexibility, essentially lowering your ability to strategize, delay gratification, or stay committed to goals. On the other hand, when inner speech is self-affirming, the prefrontal cortex lights up. It enters a state of executive control, allowing you to override distractions and stay the course. That's why daily affirmations, when done with belief and emotional involvement, actually improve cognitive performance. Spiritual teacher William Walker Atkinson taught, "Concentration is the key to thought power, and your thoughts are shaped by what you say within." Inner speech is the steering wheel, concentration is the road, and motivation is the vehicle. 3. The limbic system. This emotional center of the brain, particularly the amygdala and hippocampus, is deeply influenced by inner speech. If your self-talk is anxious, fearful, or catastrophizing, the limbic system remains on high alert. You may feel stuck in fight or flight mode, where survival trumps creativity or ambition. But when your inner speech becomes nurturing, forgiving, and visionary, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, reducing fear and making space for sustained, long-term motivation. This aligns perfectly with the teachings of Neville Goddard, who said, "Change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live." So what does this mean in practical terms? It means motivation isn't just about getting hyped or forcing yourself into action. It's about rewiring the brain, not through external discipline alone, but through internal speech. Every time you tell yourself, "I can do this. This matters to me. I'm getting better every day," you're not just boosting your mood. You're stimulating dopaminergic pathways, activating executive functions, and retraining the RAS to spot momentum and progress. In essence, you're engineering motivation from within. This is where science meets mysticism. Neville Goddard called it living in the end, assuming the state of the wish fulfilled. Neuroscience calls it neuroplasticity, repeated thoughts forming new neural connections. Different language, same principle. A new definition of motivation. So perhaps we need a new definition of motivation, not as a fleeting spark of energy, but as a state of alignment between what you believe, what you say to yourself, and what your brain is conditioned to pursue. Inner speech is the seed, motivation is the fruit. And if your garden isn't growing, don't force the harvest. Change the words you plant. Section 3. Reprogramming inner speech for lasting motivation. Neville Goddard and the assumption of motivation. A revolutionary idea. Live from the end. Don't try to become motivated. Assume you already are. This shift in inner speech rewires not only belief, but behavior. Neville said, "Speech is the image of mind. Therefore, to change the speech is to change the mind." When you assume the state of being energized, focused, and driven, even if you don't feel it yet, your inner speech transforms your state of consciousness. That, in turn, creates new neurochemical patterns, reinforcing the very motivation you seek. This isn't blind affirmation. It's neurological reconditioning. Modern neuroscience backs it. Through Hebbian plasticity, neurons that fire together wire together. Repeated self-suggestion literally changes the brain structure. So when Neville said to revise your past through imagination and declare your ideal in the present, he was unknowingly describing neural rewiring. How do we reprogram inner speech to create lasting, self-sustaining motivation? The answer lies in a combination of spiritual practices, scientific techniques, and daily conscious effort. Let's begin with the foundation. Step 1. Become conscious of the unconscious. You can't change what you don't recognize. Most of us have an automatic loop running beneath our awareness. An internal narrative formed by early experiences, societal conditioning, and emotional memory. This inner voice is subtle, but powerful. It says things like, "I'll never follow through. I'm too late to start. What's the point? It won't work anyway." You may not hear these clearly. They've become background noise, but they're sculpting your neural architecture and behavior. Your first task is awareness. Start with a daily inner speech inventory. At various points during the day, pause and write down what you've been telling yourself. Especially take note of how you speak to yourself during moments of challenge, hesitation, or setback. This is the mental equivalent of turning on the lights in a dark room. Neville Goddard said, "The first step in changing your future is desire. That desire must be defined, and the desire defined must be felt as real, spoken internally as though it is already done." To speak the new, you must first identify the old. Step 2. Create a new inner language. Once you've identified the disempowering inner speech, you begin the reprogramming process by consciously choosing new phrases, affirmations with emotion, precision, and identity alignment. Let's be clear. This is not mere positive thinking. This is neurological reconditioning, creating new associative links, reinforcing identity-based motivation, and updating your reticular activating system. Here's how you do it. Make it identity-based. Instead of saying, "I want to be motivated," say, "I am a motivated, focused, and resilient person." This aligns with what James Clear describes in Atomic Habits. True behavior change is identity change. Speak in the present tense. As Neville Goddard emphasized, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Say, "I am already living in alignment with my highest self." Not, "I will one day feel more motivated." Anchor to emotion. Neuroscience shows that emotional intensity strengthens neural encoding. Don't just say your affirmations, feel them deeply. Imagine your body filled with energy, your mind focused, your heart open. William Walker Atkinson wrote in The Power of Concentration, "The affirmations of today are the beliefs of tomorrow and the actions of the next day." Step 3. Use repetition plus visualization. Inner speech becomes powerful through consistency. The brain rewires through repetition, the principle of neuroplasticity. But to accelerate the process, combine affirmations with visualization. See yourself acting, achieving, showing up as the version of you that's already motivated and clear. Visualize yourself waking up early, energized. Visualize finishing the project, feeling proud. Visualize showing courage when fear shows up. As Neville taught, imagining creates reality, because the subconscious doesn't know the difference between a vividly imagined act and a real one. Neuroscience confirms this. Functional MRI studies show that when people visualize an action, the brain activates the same areas as when they physically do it. In other words, imagine it vividly plus affirm it daily equals install it neurologically. Step 4. Build micro-momentum. Motivation is not a lightning strike. It's a fire you build. And every small action is a log on that fire. When you change your inner speech and back it with even tiny steps, your brain starts creating new feedback loops. For example, inner speech. I am consistent and driven. Micro-action. 5 minutes of focused work. Dopamine is released. Motivation grows. Belief is reinforced. B.J. Fogg, Stanford behavior scientist and author of Tiny Habits, shows that small wins create lasting change because they build emotional momentum. Spiritual teachers have echoed this for centuries. In Eastern traditions, this is called right action, not striving to do the big thing, but acting with alignment in this moment. Step 5. Speak kindly when you fall short. True motivation isn't about perfection. It's about resilience. And resilience grows from how you speak to yourself in failure. If you miss a day, fall into distraction, or lose momentum, don't attack yourself. That only reinforces shame and disengagement. Instead, say, "This is a moment, not my identity. I recommit." Dr. Kristin Neff, the leading researcher on self-compassion, shows that people who are kind to themselves after failure are far more likely to get back on track. Neville Goddard would say, "You must persist in the assumption, not because reality hasn't caught up, but because your inner speech is creating that very reality." The key is persistence, not punishment. In summary, reprogramming. Inner speech is not about hype or delusion. It's about consciously choosing words that reshape your identity, emotions, and neural pathways. Every thought repeated becomes a belief. Every belief fuels or starves your motivation. And when you combine the ancient wisdom of the imagination with the modern science of neuroplasticity, you become the architect of your inner world. And from that world, your external life begins to shift. Section 4. Motivation, imagination, and the quantum connection. What if motivation isn't something you chase, but something you collapse into reality through your focus and imagination? This isn't just poetic language. Both ancient mystics and modern physicists suggest a startling idea. Your conscious observation, your attention, doesn't just experience reality, it creates it. Let's unpack how this ties into motivation and how your inner speech may be the steering wheel of your quantum reality. The observer effect. Mind shapes matter. In quantum physics, there's a strange but widely accepted principle called the observer effect. At the subatomic level, particles don't have fixed states. They exist in a cloud of potential outcomes, called a probability wave. But the moment an observer focuses on a particle, the wave collapses, and it takes on a specific, defined form. This has baffled scientists for decades. Why does the act of observation cause a probability to become a physical outcome? And here's the bigger question. What else collapses under the weight of your attention? Spiritual teachers like Neville Goddard believed your assumptions, your inner conversations, and your imaginal acts are the observers. Your imagination is the instrument, the means, whereby your redemption from slavery, sickness, and poverty is effected. He wasn't talking about atoms. He was talking about your life, your health, your finances, your relationships, your goals. Imagination is the blueprint of motivation. Motivation is traditionally defined as the drive to act, but Neville reframed this. The world is yourself pushed out, meaning your outer life is the echo of your inner speech and assumptions. Modern psychology and neuroscience confirm this too. Your default mode network, DMN, the seat of your imagination and self-reflection, is constantly simulating the future. It doesn't just daydream. It predicts, models, and influences decision-making by assigning meaning to imagined outcomes. If your inner speech is filled with dread, doubt, and failure, your brain predicts that future, and motivation shuts down. But if your imagination rehearses success, with vivid detail, emotion, and clarity, your brain aligns your body, energy, and behaviors toward that imagined destiny. In both cases, your imagined inner reality becomes your neurological roadmap. The Reticular Activating System, spotlight of consciousness. We've mentioned the RAS before, your Reticular Activating System. It acts as a filtering mechanism, determining what information gets into your conscious mind. Think of it like your brain's spotlight. It shines only where you direct it. When your inner speech repeatedly says, "I am lazy," your RAS highlights proof of laziness, failure, and reasons not to act. But when you say, "I am powerful, clear, and inspired," the RAS begins noticing evidence of progress, opportunity, and energy. It's not just spiritual, it's survival. Your brain wants to conserve energy by filtering out the irrelevant. Your inner speech tells your brain what's relevant. Neville taught that you must dare to assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. In RAS terms, you must instruct your brain what to look for. Quantum identity and motivation. Here's a powerful exercise that blends Neville's teachings with quantum principles. Collapse the identity you desire into the present moment. In other words, stop trying to become and start being. You don't motivate yourself by pushing toward a future version of yourself. You become motivated by stepping into that version now. Neville would say, to be transformed, the whole basis of your thoughts must change. That means, speak from your future self. Think as your future self. Feel and act as if it's already real. From a quantum perspective, you're choosing which version of reality, which timeline, to observe, believe, and energize. Motivation isn't found in the future. It's selected in the now, by assumption, imagination, and inner dialogue. Science echoes spirit. Let's connect the dots. Quantum physics teaches us that observation collapses potential into reality. Neuroscience teaches us that attention and imagination wire the brain. Spiritual wisdom teaches us that inner speech is the seed of creation. Together, they say, what you consistently imagine, assume, and affirm becomes your life. Motivation, then, isn't a random emotion. It's the result of consciously selecting your reality and persisting in that assumption until your world begins to rearrange itself accordingly. This is not theory. This is your power. Section 5. Daily practices to sustain inner motivation. So far, we've explored the science, the spirit, and the structure of inner speech and motivation. Now let's make it practical, because knowledge without application doesn't create transformation. In this section, we'll explore daily habits, mental techniques, and inner rituals that help you sustain high levels of motivation, not by pushing, but by aligning your inner world with the outer reality you desire to create. 1. The Assume the Feeling Morning Practice. Inspired by Neville Goddard, this practice centers around beginning your day in the end state, the feeling of your wish already fulfilled. How to do it? As soon as you wake up, before touching your phone or speaking a word, close your eyes. Ask yourself, what would it feel like if today I were already who I want to become? Generate that emotion. Is it peace, power, confidence, joy? Say softly in your mind, today I live from my fulfilled self. This engages your default mode network, DMN, and begins shaping your brain's filter, your reticular activating system, to seek evidence that supports this identity. When you assume the feeling of the fulfilled desire, you shift from hoping to knowing. That's where motivation is born. 2. The Inner Speech Audit. Most people never stop to observe what they're saying to themselves. This technique is simple but powerful. Every hour, pause and ask, what am I saying to myself right now? If the answer is self-defeating or stressful, change it. Replace I'm behind with I'm exactly where I need to be. Replace I can't do this with I'm learning, I am capable, I grow stronger every moment. This not only shifts your mood, it rewires your brain through the mechanism of neuroplasticity. Your inner speech literally reshapes your identity over time. 3. Visual rehearsal for motivation. Top athletes, CEOs, and performers use this, and so did Neville. Every night before bed, do this. Close your eyes, see yourself motivated, focused, and following through on the exact things that matter most to you. Imagine the emotions of success, pride, flow, clarity. Hear the words you'd say if it were real now. Loop it, just 3 to 5 minutes. Neuroscience calls this mental rehearsal. It strengthens the same neural pathways as real experience. Spiritually, it's what Neville called living in the end. And over time, your brain no longer sees that vision as fantasy. It sees it as normal. And it begins to motivate your body and mind toward making it real. 4. Use affirmations as reprogramming tools. Affirmations are not magic words. They're neurological instructions. When repeated with emotion and clarity, affirmations activate the RAS, directing your attention, the limbic system, stirring emotional energy, the cortical structures, reinforcing new identity. Here are some powerful affirmations for motivation. I act from purpose, not pressure. I am energized by my inner vision. I am consistent, clear, and committed. I choose thoughts that empower me. Speak them out loud or write them down daily. Even better, record yourself saying them in a calm, grounded tone and listen while walking or relaxing. Remember, repetition plus emotion equals rewiring. 5. The Evening Integration Journal. Your day ends the way it began, in your inner world. Before sleep, write these 3 reflections. What did I say to myself today that helped me? What moment did I feel most aligned and motivated? What new belief will I carry into tomorrow? This anchors your progress. It also engages sleep-based consolidation, your brain's process of locking in what's emotionally and mentally important during the night. Neville Goddard always emphasized the power of the last 5 minutes before sleep. That's when your conscious mind impresses the subconscious. Dwell upon the feeling of the wish fulfilled and silently drop off to sleep. Your last inner speech of the day becomes your spiritual seed for the next one. Daily practice. Summary. Morning. Assume the end. Start in the fulfilled identity. Hourly. Check your inner dialogue and course correct. Evening. Visualize and journal your alignment. Always. Speak to yourself as if you already are what you desire to become. When these become habits, even tiny daily rituals, you start seeing a shift. You no longer wait to feel motivated. You become the source of it. Motivation stops being an emotion and becomes your identity. In the next and final section, we'll weave everything together. The science, the spirit, the speech, and leave you with a powerful reminder of the hidden force always within your control. Section 6. Final reflections. The voice that shapes your world. So now we return to the beginning, to the voice you carry within you, and the question we asked at the very start. What are you saying to yourself? You see, motivation isn't something you wait for. It's not a lightning strike. It's not external. And it's certainly not random. Motivation is created by choice, by attention, and by your inner speech. The true creative power. Neville Goddard said, "Change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live." What does that mean? It means the world is not your source. You are. The world reacts to your assumptions, mirrors your inner conversations, and aligns with your identity. This isn't just spiritual metaphor. Modern science, from neuroplasticity, confirmation bias, RAS activation, to quantum observation, confirms it. Your brain physically rewires itself based on what you repeatedly think and feel. Your attention sculpts your perception of reality. Your beliefs become self-fulfilling patterns, and your inner narrative becomes your outer direction. From survival to creation. Most people use their inner speech for survival, worrying, criticizing, replaying failures, predicting worst-case scenarios. But you now know something deeper. You can use your inner speech for creation. You can speak from your future self. You can imagine with purpose. You can choose motivation not as a fleeting state, but as a way of being. Motivation as a spiritual discipline. What if motivation was more than a mindset? What if it was a spiritual practice, a daily communion between your current self and your infinite potential? And today's neuroscientists are just beginning to see what the mystics always knew. As within, so without. As above, so below. As you assume, so you become. You're not waiting for motivation, you are speaking it into being, and every time you change your inner dialogue, you are rewiring your brain, reprogramming your identity, and realigning your destiny. The final invitation. So I leave you with this simple but life-altering challenge. Speak only what you want to live. Replace "I can't" with "I am becoming." Replace "it's hard" with "I grow through this." Replace "I don't feel like it" with "I choose to rise." Because your subconscious is always listening, your brain is always wiring, and your life is always reflecting. The voice you hear the most is your own, and that voice has the power to create worlds. Let it speak power. Let it speak vision. Let it speak your highest self into being, day by day, breath by breath, because that's where real, lasting motivation begins. If this message resonated with you, consider subscribing to Speech and Mind, where ancient wisdom meets modern science to help you reshape your mind and reclaim your inner world. And remember, the words you say within become the life you live without. Until next time, speak truth, speak power, speak from the end. Thank you for listening.